Rewrite our story. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Kat, here. Welcome, Kat.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. I'm so excited to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation since we met. You have a really powerful story. I'm going to share your bio in a moment, but before we get into that, as I always do, I'd love if you can answer the question, have you ever been a people pleaser? And if yes, what did that look like in your life?
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I've met anyone that could say no. So yes, I feel like I'm still a recovering people pleaser, but yeah, as far as, what it felt like for me, I think looking back on the things that I've been through, it's looked different in each stage. And I think in the beginning it was more of wanting to fit in, making sure that I was liked, making sure that my relationship maintained steadiness or in good standing, and there wasn't a lot of negativity. To now, I feel that it comes up, but I feel it's more of like an occasional guilt because of the way that society's kind of taught us to do things. Like women, for instance, oh, well, you take care of everybody. That's what you do. And so for the longest time, right? Like if my kids were like, hey, I need this, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. Well, I can move my schedule around and we'll make that happen. Where now it's like, no, mom works from these hours. If I happen to have a break on my lunch, maybe, but more than likely, you're going to have to pre plan that out. So I still feel like, there's some things that come up, but it's definitely a lot different and a lot more manageable. We'll put it that way. This year, this time around versus what it
Mhm.
has been in the past, which I felt like it was just this overwhelming guilt if you said no to anybody.
Mhm. Yeah, that's real. I'm a recovering people pleaser also, and I can absolutely relate to the feelings around saying no. And one of the things that I like to remind myself of, and I feel like I've said it a few times on the podcast over the time, is we get to say no to the good stuff in order to say yes to the greats. So even though some of these things that we have to say no to, or we're choosing to, not have to, we are choosing to say no to, are really good things. Doesn't mean they're not good or we don't think they're good. It's that in order for us to put our focus on the great things, sometimes that choice gets to be made. And that helps me to reduce the feeling of guilt inside of me. So I'd love for for us to dig into this idea of rewriting your story. But before we do that, I want to share your bio. Truly incredible. A beacon of transformation and resilience in this scarcity-laden society. You've come from performing on stage at the age of 10. I'm so curious about that, to navigating teenage pregnancy and enduring a decade-long abusive relationship. Your journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and self discovery, fueled by personal experiences. She shifted her narrative, my friends who are listening, from victimhood to empowerment. I love this. Realization that we can rewrite our story, we can write a new chapter, we can write the next level, the next version, the next book, inspiring others to rewrite their stories as well. So here we are talking about rewriting stories. uh, you know your life the best. Where do you want to dive in that you feel is relevant and important to share with the listeners with this topic?
Oh my goodness. There's so many areas I feel like you could start. You know what
Mhm.
though? I'll start with what pinged me when you were talking about rewriting the story. You
Mhm.
said something about, rewriting your book or just writing a new chapter, and I'll tell you what was my go-to when I decided to really step into the realm of healing, which actually was almost 5 years after getting out of my abusive relationship.
Wow.
And when I started really kind of shifting that and realizing that like I needed to make changes with myself that was also going to help make changes within my kids, I started telling people I am no longer writing in that book. That book is closed. I am writing an entirely different one. So they can be in a series together, but I'm done. Like, I'm done with that book. It's closed. There is the end. We're going to start something brand new. And so that was something that I kind of changed because, most people do say, I'm just going to write a new chapter. And for me, because of all the things I had been through in such a very short amount of time, it really kind of saying a new chapter for me was like, I'm just kind of doing the same thing, but like writing something. I was like, no, we're a whole new book.
We're
Like,
closing this,
we're
baby.
closing this and we are starting
Yeah.
all over. And that was kind of the beginning of redefining who it is that I wanted to be. And I
Mm.
started basing that more off of who I was versus what everybody else around me had been telling me for years.
I love that. So, so powerful. And you are reminding me of a message that I've shared quite frequently with clients who are like, well, I always do this. I always. And I'm like, well, listen, you may have always done it up until this moment, this moment right here, but the new you is what now? Right? How are we moving forward in this now moment? That is different, because if you're saying you want to be different and you want things to be different, how are you moving forward in this now moment? So I
Yes.
love this idea of closing that book altogether. And I'd love to know, if you're open to sharing, what was the catalyst? You've gone through all these things and you're like, okay, now is the time to start closing that chapter, closing that book.
Yeah. So if we kind of backtrack a little bit, on my
Hmm.
story, so pregnant at 16, I fought to make that correct. At that time, I use air
Mm.
quotes for that because it happens, right? But I tried to
Sure.
correct what had happened. So I changed schools. I graduated a year early. I actually graduated second in class with honors and president of student
Mm.
council. And so I turned around and did what everybody said to do, which was go right into college and get a full time job. Well, I went into daycare so that I could take my son with me because I
Mm.
refused to allow my family to be the ones that raised him. And I told them that, like, this was my decision. So this is what happens. So if we go through, moving from that into an abusive relationship for 10 years, I had the aha moment probably about 6 years into that relationship of, oh my God, things have to change. And it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the way that my kids were speaking to me at a very young age. And that was kind of what pinged me. It took me 2 years to be able to get out of that once I kind of started realizing that things needed to shift. The second time that this happened, when I really decided that, like, we're done with this book and we're starting all over, was after my relationship. So after I was out of my abusive relationship, later on, I did have another one. I got engaged, I bought a house. And what I realized was there were some similarities of some things going on. He wasn't extremely narcissistic. He was not abusive in that way, but there was just like there was an ego, there was some gaslighting, there were some things. And I started working on myself because my oldest one was actually moving into his teenage stage. And I was like, okay, they've got to change.
Mhm.
And what actually ended up happening was somehow I got an invitation for a free facial, which I'd never done before at like 30 years old. And I took it and I met with this lady, and then she started talking about manifestation and law of attraction. I was like, what on earth? And then I just went down the rabbit hole. But
Mhm.
what happened in that rabbit hole was I really started discovering, like, oh wow, I actually have more control over things than what I think, but I'm controlling it the wrong way.
Mhm.
And as I started kind of working through some of those and like opening up to the possibilities of like, okay, well, maybe I could work on this and I could do this. I actually had a conversation with my ex and I was like, hey, like, I'm really enjoying learning about this and this is the direction I want to go and this is how I want our relationship to turn towards.
Mhm.
So, you know, here's what it is. You can either jump off the deep end with me and we'll find the bottom together, or you can stay up top. But just know if you stay up top, I'm not coming back up for you. And so
Mhm.
I gave him 1 year, and ultimately he chose to stay the same, and
Mhm.
I chose to keep changing. So I, at that point, almost 5 years into that relationship, I broke off my engagement. I sold my house to him. I moved back into an apartment with my 2
Wow.
kids, and I started all over. And when I did, I went from being in the medical field to an entrepreneur. I'd moved into the real estate
Mhm.
field, and I was like, "That's it. Like everything is changing. I know the direction I want to go. I have a better idea of who I'd actually want to have in my life, some better goals of the directions I want to go. And so I was like, that's
Mm.
it. Like, I can't keep taking the patterns with me. We're closing that book. You're going on the shelf and we're starting all over.
Mm. Wow. Wow. So many nuggets here you've talked about manifestation, you've talked about having more control in your life, realizing that you have more control, patterns. So let's loop this back around in terms of all these people who are listening who might be saying, okay, maybe it's time for me to rewrite my story. Maybe it's time to close the book on this part of my life, start a new book, or maybe it's, finishing a chapter, whatever it is for that person. What is the step one that you recommend as a coach of someone who might be going through a similar, or, maybe not similar, but they want to rewrite their journey?
Yeah, I love this question. So I would say for anyone, step one to deciding that you want to write a whole new book or finish that chapter is you have to commit to knowing you want to change. And
Mm,
there's a difference in that, right? There was tons of times I wanted to like change things, right?
mm,
But it wasn't a commitment. I made
yeah.
a commitment to myself that like the patterns that I am seeing are not working for me. This is not working for me. Therefore, I no longer want it in my life because I've realized that this pattern has been here for
Mm,
10, 15 years and it's still not serving me. So
yeah.
I'm done. And that in itself can be extremely scary, right? Because that means
Hmm.
you are literally letting go of a piece of you and you are rebuilding something completely different. But there's also a beauty in that as well, because then you get to look inside and you get to, okay, well, what do I want? What do I like? What do I not like?
Hmm.
What am I willing to deal with? What am I not willing to deal with? And I
Hmm.
really made a list of that. And it actually started with who I wanted in my life. And it was like,
Hmm.
okay, like if I have a man in my life, this is what I'm willing to deal with. This is what I'm not. And I created my own boundaries, which was something that I didn't really
Hmm.
have. And a lot of people that are people pleasers, right? We struggle with boundaries. And so that was the first step was it had to be not just a, yeah, I really should change this. It was, no, I'm done. I am done. This is what's going to happen now. And then staying on myself to continue down that path and being okay with saying, you know what? It's fine. I don't want this anymore. It hasn't served me. It's
Yeah.
not going to serve me. Let's try something different.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said there. And the other wording for boundaries that popped up as you were talking is the non-negotiables. The
Mm,
non-negotiables that you were not going to override, right? Um,
yes.
very, very important piece in that, rewriting the story for sure. And I'm wondering, uh, when you work with someone and they are fighting up against that, they want to change, they know that that's the right thing for them, they want to step, but they keep keeping one toe in that side of their old self versus the new self that they're becoming. What's
Mhm.
the guidance that you give to them then?
The biggest piece of guidance I can give to anyone that, like you said, really wants to make that shift, but at the same time is like, but I know this,
Yeah, but I.
is take it back a few steps and let's start small. Okay. So I'll give you an example. For people that are people pleasers, someone like me who have a really hard time saying no, a lot of people will teach or will coach and will say, okay, well, just say no. And you're just going to have to get used to it. And your body's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to deal with it. Not everybody can do that, and especially if you have someone that has a lot of trauma in their past, right? That is it's so gut-wrenching that it's hard to even get the word out of your mouth, right?
Mhm.
So, let's start small, okay? If someone says, "Hey, we got this party we'd love for you to come to," and you're like, "There is no way, I am overbooked." But you can't just say, "Yeah, no, I can't." Say, "Oh, you know what? I would love to. Let me actually check my schedule and make sure
Mhm.
I'm not overlapping myself with something else, and I'll get back to you. Is that okay? Start with something small. You don't have to go for the throat to
Mhm.
start because what you allow yourself to do is you get to tippy toe into that new
Mhm.
feeling. So it's not so scary. It's a little
Yeah.
scary, but it's not so scary, right? That's like, if your kid has a giant nightlight in their room and you're trying to
Mhm.
get them to stop using a nightlight. You don't just take the nightlight out of their room. Maybe you do one that's a little bit dimmer. Maybe you do one that's just not as bright,
Mhm.
and then you kind of phase out of it. It's the same way when we're trying to step out of patterns that we've had for ages or our entire life. It's really hard for a lot of us to just completely be like, "Up, and we're done." It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way as much as we want it to. So if you can take baby steps, what you do is you build the confidence in that new habit, in that new saying, and then it starts to get easier. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier to be like, oh, yeah, I really would, but I already know I'm booked. I so appreciate it. Maybe we can get coffee again another time, right? But it takes those smaller steps to get you to that point to feel confident enough to say, yeah, I can't, or no, I'm sorry, that doesn't align with me. So you really have to start small. That's my favorite thing to do with my clients.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think, there's these people wanting to start this new book, move on to the next phase of life. And and I'm going to use air quotes here as well, loving members around them say, but you can't do that because this is who you've always been and this is who you're going to be and yada 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 because this is my own perception. So how are you guiding these individuals when the people they air quotes that love them are telling them that no, it's not even possible?
That one is always a touchy one. Anytime
Mhm.
that you bring in family and not just your inner circle into the mix, it gets
Mhm.
super, super touchy.
Mhm.
For some people, we can go back and start having a conversation and say, okay, well, what they're saying is this.
Mhm.
Do you agree with it? No. Okay. So then is that your truth or is it their truth? Okay, it's
Mhm.
their truth. Great. Okay. So are we choosing to accept their truth or are we choosing to make our own truth? Right? You have to
Mhm.
come back to your own belief systems. And it really does come back to reprogramming the brain, right? A lot of our beliefs and our truths that we have been there because they were built on someone else, usually by the people that raised us or the people that were
Yeah.
around us as we were growing up. But that does not make it truth, and it sure as heck does not make it your truth. But that is something that people really, really struggle with. And so there is a fine line between, okay, we can have a conversation. This is how you can start to stand up to them. Maybe you start
Mhm.
distancing yourself. Maybe you don't do as many calls. Maybe you don't talk about what it is that you're building in
Mhm.
front of them if you see that they're constantly putting you down. How can we start creating a small barrier to protect your space, which is ultimately more important than absolutely anything, right? And then I've
Mhm.
had some that they're so deep into it that it is gonna take therapy to help them kind of see and
For
disconnect,
sure.
and then we can start working on that, right? But I do think that it really is understanding how important you are and how
Mhm.
much you mean to you, and then being able to divide those truths that are coming
Mhm.
out and making the decision of, yeah, I agree with that. I'll own that one. Or, you know what? I did do that and I agree with that, but that's not who I choose to be anymore.
Yes, anymore. Right? Anymore. And recognizing that you can use these powerful words to help people see where you're going now. I
Yeah.
used to be like this, or I used to do that. What I'm choosing now, who I am being now, the acts that I'm focused on now, uh, that's going to well, maybe not resonate, but it will be putting out to those around you the new messaging so that they can begin to see, okay, she is serious. She is moving forward in a different way. I'd love to know, you have a concept called the lotus effect. Tell me about this.
I love this question. The concept of the lotus effect. So, for me, the lotus is extremely symbolic. I know that we kind of talked about that in the beginning, through my bio and everything. When I got out of my abusive relationship, I really literally had to rebuild who I was. I had no clue who I was because I was in an abusive relationship from the age of 18 to 28.
Mm,
So I literally started, I feel like my 18 years old at 28. I bought my first car, I
mhm,
bought my first cell phone. And so the lotus to me has always symbolized that you can come through the crappiest, dirtiest mud, yet when you rise to the surface, you are completely unharmed. You are completely mended. You are absolutely beautiful. And I feel like that is the piece that I work on with every person that I meet, right? A lot of people that I meet are kind of in their own mud in some way, shape, or form. And I get to guide them so that they can find their own truth, their own courage, their own bravery, and then rise to the surface to blossom into what is ever uniquely them. And so the concept of the whole lotus effect encompasses that to its very core. And it truly does symbolize for me, one, what I have been through, but two, what I take people through as well.
I love that. I love that. Sounds amazing. And I can feel this beautiful energy as you're talking about it. So I know that it's coming right from your heart. I'd love to know, as we're getting near the end of this episode here, what else would you say to the person who is raising their hand to, yes, it's time for me to rewrite my story?
I would say to anyone that feels like I'm ready to rewrite my story, I'm ready to choose me, write it down. I know
Mm.
that sounds so cliche. And everybody's like, write it all down, just journal it out. Okay, hold on. Let me give you some backstory. But seriously, I write down a list. Make you two lists. Make a list of the things that you have done that you know you don't want to do anymore. And make a list of things that you want to do and you know you want to become. And then start from the top. Start figuring out what is the easiest thing that I can start paying attention to. For instance, the way that I speak about myself. So maybe I stop calling myself stupid. Maybe I stop saying, oh, never going to figure that out. Why don't we just redirect that small thing? Because then that's going to mean I'm going to talk better about myself, which I have written over here. So start small, because then you can get to the bigger tasks as you start to grow. And ultimately, what you are doing at your very core is, one, you're reprogramming the brain to believe in new truths that you are now creating versus truths from everyone else. And two, you are creating courage, bravery, and all of these pieces that you need in order to tackle those bigger pieces that you have on that piece of paper that you want to be. And while it's amazing to have other people's insights and have them to congratulate you, none of that compares to you having your own inner strength. So you have to build that up first. And that starts so simplistically. So simplistically. We make it so much harder than it is. So start with a list.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And you have a mantra that you really love, that everything happens for us, not to us. Tell me that, how that has played in for you as we were sharing here today.
Yeah. So, you know what's funny? The first time I ever heard someone else say something similar, that, everything happens for me, not, to me, I was like, what does that doesn't even make any sense. I'm like, but if you think about it, it goes back to the bio as well, from victimhood to empowerment. If you have a victimhood mentality, everything is happening to you. Why me? Why this? Why is this happening? Why is this going? Well, I know why this is going down. It's always about you. If you can shift it to it's happening for me, you can find the lessons in even the worst situations. And that's what I had to do for myself when I came out of my abusive relationship. For quite a few years, I did play the woe is me. And all I did was just stay upset and just completely beat down of, I don't understand. I've never done anything so horrible to anyone that I should be put through this, or that my children should have been put through this. But when I shifted the focus to, okay, where are the lessons within here that I could learn? I quickly realized, one, I have always been the outspoken go getter who advocates for everyone. I mean, when I was in grade school, that was who I was, right? And it was like, okay, so if that's who I am and I embody that and I enjoy being that person, that means I can take this that I've been through and now I can advocate for others who don't have a voice. For those who may not even be living, to have a voice to let others know what they've been through. So That's what I mean when I say everything happens for me and not to me. It's
Mm,
taking the things that have happened to you and not necessarily saying, "Oh yeah, nope, I deserve this because I needed to learn this lesson," but it's finding the things in it that you can take out of it, which ultimately help you break the cycle patterns so that
yes.
you can make a new path to decide to do something different. Or if you're in that situation down the road, you're going to recognize it 10
Mm,
times quicker than if you are like, woe is me. Because if you are in that mentality, it breezes right over your head. But when you can
yeah.
focus on the lessons, then as soon as you get in it, you're like, ooh, nope, done
Mm,
that one before. I'm
yes.
gonna slide my way out of this conversation. I'm gonna slide myself out of this situation. But it
Mm,
just gives you this amazing ability to have mental clarity
mm,
around what you have been through and what you want to go through and being able to shift and pivot when you need to. And that's all a part of life, in my personal
yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I 100% agree with everything you're saying here. And I would say there's so many people that get in that feeling of stuck because they stay in that state of why me, why this, why is that thinking helping you find the learning? Is it helping you move forward? Instead, find the learning and take the next step so that you can have the growth and move into the next story of your life, right? That next book that you're writing. I'm so grateful, Kat, for you sharing so openly about what you've been through, and you have a beautiful heart, and I can tell that you're helping many, many people with what you're sharing here today. And I'd love for you to share, how can people connect with you who have resonated with your energy and your message today?
Oh, well, thank you so much, first off, Amy, for the opportunity and the platform to be able to continue to share this message with other people. I can't
Mm,
thank you enough for that. As far as anybody that's looking to find me and follow me and all of that good stuff, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. It's all
mm,
at the Lotus Effect Coach. You can DM me, send me a message. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. Or you can check out my website, which is the lotus effect.com, and
mhm.
follow there as well.
Awesome. And I'll post all those links in the show notes for people so that they can get in touch with you. Again, thank you for sharing your heart and all of this incredible wisdom today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. You as well.
And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into Power to the People Pleasers. Please leave us a comment, share this episode. We want to spread this message far and wide. And please have a wonderful day. We'll see you